Hello everybody and welcome to another Twilight Zone review. Today it is Season 3, Episode 3, The Shelter, written by Rod Serling and starring Larry Gates as Dr. Stockton and Jack Albertson as Jerry Harlow. So this episode is kind of a mixed bag. In one way I see the point and why the episode is created the way it is. In another way I think the episode's just a little bit too over the top, but I will explain all of that as I go through the episode. So we start with a group of people, 4 couples I believe, which is somewhat significant, and they're celebrating the birthday of a doctor, and he and his family are really the main characters. And basically everything's going fine until the doctor's son comes in the room and says we should turn on the radio because on TV they said there was some kind of warning that everyone should hear. So they do this, they turn on the radio and they find out that there is an unidentified object in the sky and it might be a bomb, but they don't really know for sure, which is also significant. So right away everybody starts, panicking and freaking out, and we also find out that the doctor is prepared. He has created a bomb shelter and nobody else has. They kind of thought it was a waste of time. So we then go to the doctor and his family, and they're getting ready, they're preparing, they're getting water and trying to get supplies so they can go to the shelter and that, they'll be safe, they'll survive. I thought this scene was really well acted and it really brought a believability to what was going on. They're very tense and scared, and they also, quarrel a little bit, the doctor and his wife, and I thought this was all very realistic. Then there was another scene that I really liked where the doctor was talking about surviving, and his wife, her name is Grace, I believe, questioned, why should we survive? If we survive, and there's a bomb, what will we come out to? What will the world be like? Which is a valid question I think a lot of people will have. Everything will be different. There's a lot of fear there. And the doctor reassures her, saying we have to survive for our son because he's young, and he deserves a chance in the world, which is also a valid point. Up to this point, I think the episode's excellent. Unfortunately, some problems start to come in at this point. We get a knock on the door, and Jerry is there, who, is friends with the doctor and was at the party, and he wants to use the doctor's shelter for him and his family. And they argue about it. The doctor says we don't have any room in there for more people, and I have to look out for my family first, which is a valid point. And the other man, Jerry, says we won't use any of your supplies or anything, and the doctor says, well, what about air? You'll be using our air. So you can see where both people want to protect their family, which makes sense. Then they start arguing and shouting and yelling at each other about this, which I still buy up to a point, although I do think that the acting in this scene is a little overdone. The actors were probably guided to act this way to make a point. I don't necessarily blame them, but it's a little overdone here. We get the point. They're both worried and concerned. So then we get another couple from the party that comes in, and they want to use the shelter. And the doctor says he can't and won't let anybody else in. And this guy really tries to make him feel guilty. He says he's a doctor, he's supposed to help people. He's basically looking out for himself and his family as well. Although, again, just the way all this is presented is very over-dramatized. But in a way that kind of works because, the show's trying to make a point of how some people might act in this kind of situation. So I get it, but I just wish it wouldn't have went quite so far in the over-dramatic aspect, in my opinion. So, then basically a 4th man comes in, the couple from the party, and of course he wants the same thing, to use the shelter, which is starting to get a little redundant at this point. We get the point. Everybody wants to use the shelter. I don't think we needed to go through this 3 times, although again it does help the episode build. So I definitely have mixed feelings about everything in this episode. So then some other things are brought into it, which I think is very realistic. They bring children into it. One lady says her family should get it because they have a small baby. Another man says, be quiet. This is what happens when we let people of other races in, which is a very sensitive topic. But, people do things like this in these kind of situations. They don't think, they just talk, and they say things they shouldn't say. So, again, all very realistic, unfortunately, I think, and very well written. So, everybody has their own reason for wanting to use the shelter. But here's where things really get out of hand, in my opinion. Another man comes. I'm not even sure who he is. I don't think he was at the party. And he finds out about the shelter. And him and the man that's a little more radical from the party, they decide that they're just going to open the door. They're going to find some kind of battering ram and they're going to batter the door in. At this point, Jerry kind of realizes, what's going on, that they're all going too far, including himself, and he tells them they're acting like a mob and they're not thinking clearly, which is absolutely true. Nobody's being rational at all at this point. So they start turning on each other, and the two men that were arguing, about the race issue and stuff before, the man that wants to use the battering ram, he actually hits the other man, and that looked pretty realistic. And at this point, everything's just a complete free-for-all. So eventually these men, the mob, they do actually batter the door down, but the minute that they do it, the radio goes on again, and we hear that the objects in the sky were just satellites and they were harmless. So it was basically a false alarm, and now everybody has to deal with the repercussions of how they acted. Now, everyone's relieved at first, but then you can tell that people feel bad about the way they acted. The man, that hit the other man, he apologizes, and he says, he takes it all back. He didn't mean what he said or what he did, and everybody kind of seems to feel the same way by their expressions. But the real question is, can you take all that back, all those things you do? And this episode really shows you, even in a tough situation, you really need to think about how you act towards other people, because after that, things might go on and you might have to deal with what you said or did. So, they say, can we get things back to normal? Maybe we'll have a party tomorrow night. And the doctor says he doesn't know what normal is, and all of them are like wild animals, just trying to survive. And, the whole thing behind it is a bomb didn't destroy them, but they might be destroyed anyway, just because of the way they acted. So this episode is very thought-provoking, and a lot of things about it I feel to be realistic. I just wish it wouldn't have went so far over the top to make its point. But because I do think, for the most part, it hits its mark, I'm going to give it the benefit of the doubt and give The Shelter a 3 out of 5. Definitely worth seeing because it's thought-provoking, but it does go a little far to make its point. So 3 out of 5 for The Shelter. As always, thanks for watching.